So for those of you that are new to us, welcome to It's Going to Be Okay with Dr. Roseann. And this is a very special episode because we are talking about calming the dysregulated ADHD brain, or any brain really that has a neurodivergent or something that's causing it to be dysregulated, with my special guest star, Kate Coffey, who is one of our amazing clinicians in our Brain Behavior Reset program. And she's one of our former parents in our program as well. Welcome, Miss Kate. I'm super excited that you're here because we haven't talked about twice exceptionality. We haven't talked about, what a parent who experiences a child with a lot of big emotions and what are things that parents can do, because we're all about solutions. So welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's exciting because we know each other so well, and you've swam in my pool many times.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about dysregulated brain and behavior. Just for those of you that haven't heard it, it's important to understand that we have understimulated behaviors and we have overstimulated behaviors. And sometimes it's clinical and sometimes it's not. But when we talk about our 2E kids, our kids with ADHD, our kids that feel things really strongly, talk about some of the behaviors that you see when they're dysregulated, whether it's understimulated or overstimulated. What kinds of things do you see as somebody who's a social worker, in the schools, in private practice? What are you seeing with kids today?
So this is a great thing to talk about. There's a lot there, and it's nice to have that separation of understimulated and overstimulated, because they go together at the same time. They look very different. That whole profile of kiddos who just kind of look like they're unfocused, they're having trouble initiating or completing a task, even something simple as, make your bed. Could be in a home setting, it could be in a school setting. Difficulty listening. A lot of times you'll think that they have like a receptive language issue. No, they just are having difficulty being able to listen to that verbal input. That distractibility piece, what do we call it? Like drifting away, looking out the window, and needing some prompting or redirecting from an adult a lot of the times to come back to what they were doing. That overstimulated profile seems to be one that we kind of catch easier because it's right there in your face.
Holy cow, isn't that the truth?
We don't have to probably go into too much detail, but it's generally those big overreactions to things. If the size of the problem is small and the reaction is not small, it's not matching, it's not congruent. Anger, and then how that anger is expressed, right? So having that those big reactions and not being able to control that anger, that emotional control aspect of the executive functioning, that's not online the way that we'd like it to be. That inability to tolerate frustration, that low frustration and stress tolerance, and of course anxiety too. That's one we really have to mention here, because a lot of times they present together.
They really do. And, when there's the big emotions are there, Kate, you really can't ignore it. And, both of us have kids that are sensitive. Both of us have kids that are twice exceptional, and they keep us on our toes. And, it's just so much harder to have any level of dysregulation in a school system, yet it's grown exponentially. I mean, you and I are in multiple decades now. And and we were just talking about that you've been working with a lot of preschoolers, because autism is just through the roof, and just neurodevelopmental, we don't know what it is kind of stuff.
It's
changed, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And the system is taxed, and a lot of people are still going to those conventional modalities and ways to treat it, and wondering why they're not having that success. We started medication. Well, your child grows, and something that started to work may not work in 3 months, or, a lot of kids are sensitive to things like medication.
Sure.
And, a lot of times, if you can make some real nice changes to an environment, and then to, diet, and again, getting in that therapy piece, the appropriate types of therapy that don't involve medication, you can have a lot of success. And there are parents and guardians who are starting to really dive into that, and having success. Personally, that's the way I chose to go with my son, who's twice exceptional. I think maybe a 3E, like we maybe need a third.
I know. You kind of do. I know. Oh, I like that. We're starting that today. 3E.
Yeah, we've got the anxiety, we've got the the ADHD, and we have the IG, the intellectually gifted, and it's quite a roller coaster ride. And I think it is to acknowledge that it's a ride, but to really soften the bumps, right? So and
because really everyone wants a really bright kid, but it means that they are in hyper alert and they pick up on everything, and they feel things much more strongly. And I never forget, like when I tested Sean when he was like 5 years old. Oh my God. And he's like just the most delicious, adorable little guy, right? And he's like, reading this and that, and he's like, he's 5 years old. And I saw you and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even get a chance to tell you about his testing, and you're in trouble. It's like a 99.9 percentile. And you were like, oh, I was kind of scared of that. And, they see everything. They can't turn things off. And so many kids with ADHD, with dyslexia, with autism have very high IQs, and intelligence just means what your intellectual potential is. Yes. It doesn't mean you can flush a toilet. It doesn't mean you can ignore an injustice. Yeah. It doesn't mean you can ignore when somebody is sassy or rude or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. It means that you actually really understand it, but you only typically have normal intelligence of emotional intelligence. And you see it, but you feel it so below where your IQ is. And there's just this like uncomfortableness that comes up. And so that's where the 3E comes in, where you get the anxiety or OCD or even depression, because you're just in this dysregulated state more than you should. And everyone always thinks you can like push away thoughts, but the really bright kid, like I'm working on something ridiculously exciting. Like it's going to be mind blowing. It's going to revolutionize things. I didn't even tell you about it, Kate. And I'm going to keep my mouth shut about what it is, because when it comes out, everyone's going to be like, oh my God. And my mind is literally, I haven't slept since I decided that I'm going to do this and discovered what it is. I know you're all waiting for it, just like my magnesium, which comes out in August. But you have this brain where you can't turn it off, but I'm pretty chill, and I know how to chill myself, and children are learning. They're learning. Right. So explain to people what 2E is, because not everybody knows what it is. It's a term, it's a thing. And it's it's part of the beautiful neurodivergent continuum. Yeah. Well, before I launch into that totally, I'm just thinking back. I think you were one of the first people who actually told me that with that whole processing piece and that sensitivity piece, that, your son's brain is like a supercomputer and everything's coming in. And because the nervous system is, all interconnected, the brain functioning, the nervous system connecting, the vagus nerve, and that, because everything's coming in and not being able to be filtered, he's going to feel everything too. And that's where that anxiety piece comes in, and that inability to like figure out how to discharge all of this now that I'm holding on to all of it. So it's so true. And we're going to talk about ways to regulate what comes from the body, because that's your specialty. Yeah. So, it's one of those really powerful things when you teach it. It can really change things like in so many ways. It's amazing. But a lot happens when you're super bright. You can't always regulate, especially when it's really very high IQ, when you're moving beyond the 97th percentile and you're in the 99th percentile. Just to know what 99th percentile means, that only 1% of people in your age, would have that kind of IQ. So, I just tested somebody I haven't tested anybody in a long time, Kate, and I did a favor and I tested somebody.
Did you really?
Oh, I was like, wait a second. How do I get into the portal to score the stuff? They turned everything off. But he was one of my 2E kids when he was little. And anyway, he needed accommodations and he's got a 99.9% IQ. He's doing great. I love him.
Yeah.
He did the neurofeedback, all the impulse control, the anger, everything's gone.
Yay.
You
That's
know, but
awesome.
he needs extended time. Yeah, it's nice to see them. You know, Kate, when you get into those 2-3 decades, you get to watch people blossom, you know, and I always want to emphasize that because we are special needs parents and kids that are different.
For sure.
And you don't want to get stuck in the worry. And there's lots of kids that use natural solutions work when you actually lean into them and you focus on behaviors. So, and you shift what you're doing, right? So I think that's really important. So let's talk about what 2E is so people can better understand it.
Yeah. Twice exceptionality is a term that kind of refers to those kids that are identified as gifted, but they also have some type of developmental, you know, we use the word disability. I'm not a fan. I like to use that positive language. Like they have something else there that kind of gets in the way of them kind of being able to work at their fullest potential on the other side of that bell curve. Like if everybody's at the top, the average IQ is somewhere at the top there, 90, 110. And then you've got your friends that like my son and others who test high and then, but also have this other thing going on. So that neurodivergence piece and the giftedness is an interesting package because then it becomes a challenge to parent, becomes a challenge to educate. There's
also a lot of expectations for people with a really high IQ.
Absolutely.
And then they think that like, oh, well, he's just doing it on purpose. She's just doing it on purpose.
No. Right.
You know,
because they're smart. They should know better.
Yeah. I mean, and so many 2E kids are ADHD. Many kids are also dyslexic. Dyslexia is a big one, right? We have to like, there's just so many famous people that are dyslexic. It's unbelievable. My husband's family they're all dyslexics with intellectual giftedness. They're all engineers, minus one person in any of the family, which is so funny. I didn't hear him say he had dyslexia though. So, but it's going to be there some way. The Hodges are there, but it is very, very common so people with ADHD and dyslexia in general have a higher IQ than normal. It doesn't mean that they're to be gifted. It really is a higher intellect. And you also have to have an area that you actually show your giftedness, right? So, you know, whether it's a particular, you know, it's science or it's art or it's reading or whatever it is, you know, there's many areas. And I want to make sure I say art and music and things like that too, because those are really important skills. But kids with 2Es, 2E kids feel emotions more strongly because I always say it comes in hot, right? So they're more prone to behavioral dysregulation. So the brain dysregulates and then the behavior falls apart. And I think one of the things that's most striking for kids with dysregulated brains, right? And we're really talking about ADHD in particular because you know, their braking system doesn't work right. So I feel something, you should be able to say, hey, that's not that important, right? But no, it bubbles up and then emotions come, whether it's anger or tears or withdraw, whatever it is, you know? And that's a tough cycle. It's a tough cycle for the child, which I don't think we talk enough about, but it's certainly tough as a parent.
Oh, for sure. You know, the kids are using whatever tools they have to try to express that. And sometimes it looks pretty ugly. It could look like biting. It could look like hitting, kicking, punching, destruction of property. And parents aren't always prepared for that either, you know, and then there's a bit of shaming that can happen, you know, within the communities of parents who don't have a 2E kid. They're like, what's wrong with you? You must not be doing something right with your parenting because Johnny's tearing it up over here. Or when you tell him no, he goes into a rage or, you know, and parents' self-esteem and self-doubt can really be impacted by that. And then it's a cycle because then your child feeds off of that too. So
So true, though.
Yeah.
There's little tolerance. I always say, like, it's almost like people feel like it's contagion. You know, I remember when Max was so impulsive, and I talk about it frequently. The bitches on the bus stop just completely rejected us because I
Yeah.
had this impulsive kid on the bus stop.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, oh, their kids had problems later in life too, sister.
Yeah.
So it's hard. We don't know what to do about it. And I'm often like, I had somebody fly out this week and from a Western state, and she was like, is it possible that these teachers really don't understand impulsive behavior? And it was in a preschool. And I'm like, yes. And also,
Yeah.
I feel, teachers, get training, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But they also have an overload. Like, we're seeing a trend, just an absolute trend of kids with neurodevelopmental behavioral issues. We are not getting better at identifying them.
Yeah.
They are there.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But I love that you bring up some of the aggression, because just because your kid is aggressive does not mean they're going to jail. It's just an outward behavior of what an internal uncomfortable and dysregulation is.
Absolutely.
And you can't ignore it.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I learned over the years and this is something for newer parents or parents of younger kids to really hear and understand, is that time is one of your good friends with this. In the early intervention pieces are so crucial. And when we say intervention, we mean, addressing the developmental needs, but also that those mental health and that nervous system dysregulation piece, that goes without saying. You can do OT and PT and speech and have social skills and, do this and do that. But if they're still buzzing inside and their brains are still going a million miles an hour, all those therapies aren't necessarily going to manifest into what behaviors you're looking to in terms of an outcome, in helping your child navigate stressors. So it's really important to get the brain balanced. Yeah.
This mom that came out this week, it's a 4-year-old. I have a bunch of 4-year-olds, Kate. And I love it because it's just so dramatic, the difference. But it's never too late. Like, you can learn new things. I think the problem when you have an impulsive child or somebody who has a lot of emotions is a shame that comes along with it. Yeah. And once the shame happens, that's when you really start having other issues. So let's talk about calm brain strategies, because you're a master at this. And you really have, I always say Kate's magic juju here in our program is people that are really stuck. Yeah. Like really stuck. And you do that through some special techniques that we'll talk about. But you got to calm the brain. Like, you have to calm the brain, and you have to teach skills. Like, there's no one and then the other. Like, people come in here wanting the magic wand. And so let's talk about ADHD parent techniques, but also just calm brain techniques, right? So we're talking about brain dysregulation and impulse control. And the special thing that you really do and has brought to us and really changed us is somatic experiencing. And so tell people what it is.
Sure. So somatic experiencing is a modality. The term is really the product of many years of work by Dr. Peter Levine. And I was able to take a deep dive into that training program probably about 10 years ago. And it's just been phenomenal in working with these kids, because a lot of times you will find that they don't necessarily take to, or they're too young for using a top-down model of therapy. So a cognitive behavioral therapy, certain other types of therapies that are kind of the gold standard for many years. Talk therapy for older kids and teens, well, it's not making changes because the body is involved in all this dysregulation. So if you can go bottom up and work with the body to release that and to discharge all that activation that's in their systems, then you have a great chance of settling the brain, the frontal lobe, and obviously the limbic brain that's on fire with a lot of our kids too.
Yeah. And, I always try to explain to parents because they're always so resistant to adding psychotherapy back in, and because they've had so many failures. And I was like, look, most therapy starts with feelings. Okay. And that's not how we process. We start with sensations, we go to
Yeah.
thoughts, and then we go to feelings.
Yes.
So if you go to feelings, you're asking somebody who only speaks English to talk in Chinese. And the kids reject it because it's not sticking. Now, you can do talk therapy when your nervous system is regulated. But until then, it's just not, the brain does not want to do cognitive work. It's so hard. And the SE part of things and understanding where it feels uncomfortable in the body, using it as a way to understand the alerts, like, ooh, danger, right? So when you're so activated, everything is danger.
Oh,
like
yeah.
how do you distinguish? So it's creating, understanding what you always talk about is a window of tolerance to understand. I've got to know what is my level of tolerance, what's real, what's not, what's going to cause me to self-regulate. And I think parents a lot of times, you don't know this stuff. We're trained therapists, and with these, our kids still keep us on our toes. We ask each other, I'm doing this, right? So, I always look at therapy when it comes to kids as coaching, because it's the parent who really needs those coping strategies.
Yes.
And SE is about teaching kids to anchor to their body.
Yes.
And it's so incredibly powerful for self-regulation. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And even when you don't have it in the get-go, you can learn it.
Yes. And it's so easy to learn. Once you've got it figured out and you've got some of the languaging, asking kids to drop in and notice where they're feeling something, anytime you can get them out, you can break that limbic brain, like that danger thought train that's going off the rails, interrupt it with checking in with a part of the body. Even that is going to give you a few moments for mom or dad or grandma or auntie to breathe, and for the child to see that you're breathing, and for them to be distracted by going in and checking on something. That's like those beginning emerging SE skills, but then also then getting them to really be able to say, okay, I'm feeling a little like fight or flighty or activated or whatever term, or, the jitters or whatever child term works for your child. And then giving them things to help to so that they realize, wow, I can actually settle that on my own without needing that co-regulation from a parent or a caretaker or, nowadays teachers and, school staff. And so it's just a great gift. And a lot of the SE techniques are fun. You can have a child, do the opposite of what you want them to do to kind of get them to see the differences. An example would be, having them like move really fast and just kind of go crazy, and then really purposely slowing down their body and their behavior to a point where it's over exaggerated. And a lot of times kids will resist slowing down through mindfulness or through guided imagery or through breath work because they're just not used to it. It's a new thing and it's not comfortable.
No, it's not comfortable. But like until somebody gets in their body, we're going to disconnect, right? And you can't build when somebody's disconnected and dysregulated.
That's right.
And I think what everyone always thinks there's like this one thing, Kate, right? Even when people come and do neurofeedback, like you guys have done neurofeedback, it's amazing. Yeah. But it's the little things that build upon each other. And I think that's, to me, the power of somatic is, I think about, we recently had an adult that came to you. And I always say that my cases I protect it so that, nobody knows. And we had an adult that had spent 40 years in therapy and did neurofeedback and did SE and was like, I didn't even know it was possible to not feel anxiety and not be activated. And, had gone, and this is like a famous person, and they had gone to like, you name it. Yeah. And they couldn't believe the difference. And it was, I was like, when you understand the power of the little, you're not going to believe it. And she was like, that was exactly what it was. It was those little things, with a little moment, being more mindful. We're going to talk about this, being more mindful and bringing those things in. And mindfulness, you know, is a word people may be exposed to, but also don't really understand. But just like you said, it's slowing down and connecting. That's how I like to think of mindfulness, but it builds executive functioning skills.
Oh yeah. Being present is something that I know my son and other kiddos that I've worked with, TUI and also just general anxiety and ADHD friends, they have trouble with, you know, doing some of those basic, like slowing down and being purposeful, being mindful, because their brains are just going so fast and they're already thinking about this, or they're thinking about 3 things at once. And, you know, so again, like making it fun, making it super kid friendly, which the modality is great about, and, you know, doing other things with the somatic experiencing, like that client that you mentioned, her growth and her healing was phenomenal. And I really think it was because she did, you know, the program here, and then combined it, like you said, she made her body and her brain more available by settling everything down through using, you know, PEMF or, you know, neurofeedback therapy, and then you build in this somatic therapy, and it just was incredible to watch her transform.
It was pretty incredible, especially when somebody, like, I just love when people are adults and they persist. And they're like, I'm going to get better. And I just think it's amazing, right? You know,
you just made me think of something. Oh my gosh. And that's where I think as a parent, it's building our own confidence level with this stuff, and having somebody, you know, a place like where we work to help support them through that process, because it's not something that, you know, kids are going to need that prompting. They're going to need the modeling. They're going to need to keep on track. It's not an older client. They know what they need. They come, they go after it. Younger kids, it's going to need to be consistent at first. It takes a lot of work, and then the payoff,
reinforcement.
All
those things that you're talking about. And, you know, like you're a mama one, I'm a mama two. I have one kid that's like super regulated. I swear it's because of all the stuff I said out loud to his dysregulated brother. Like, because I would say it, and then Giancarlo would give coaching to his brother that's 5.5 years older. You know what I mean? You know, and I was like, well, you know, and you have to make the just because somebody's bright. Again, I'm going to say it all the time, doesn't mean we have to say that they do know what they're doing. We have to make the implicit explicit, and we have to reinforce the heck out of things. And it's just become so much easier. I think that's the magic. Like, so, you know, you've done neurofeed, you know, Sean's done neurofeedback, he's done PMF, he still continues to pop back in. And I think one of the biggest things is it toned down the big emotions that he felt.
Yeah, no doubt.
And a busy mind. He's got a busy mind.
He's got a busy mind, and giving him that opportunity to do it and just be able to absorb that treatment. He doesn't have to work. He's kind of just here, and it's happening. It's making the brain changes. It's not something he has to work at. But then the other piece is the work, like you said, like changing the behaviors, changing how you think, getting rid of those cognitive distorted thoughts, like catastrophic thinking, you know, that a lot of our TUI friends do. Like, this is it, the world's ending. You know?
I can't believe they said that. They're a horrible human being. And it's like, okay, they have a different political opinion. They're not a horrible human being. You know, like just those extremes, because you know, they understand things at a deeper level, you know, where other kids can be like, whatever, you know? And I think one of the things that you and I both talk about is co-regulation and getting our stuff together, because when you have a dysregulated kid, this is a non-negotiable. This means you've got to take care of yourself. And and that's not easy. But, you know, I always say I use my PMF. That's like my PEMF is my shortcut. So, but I still do meditation. I do mindfulness-based activities. Every time I sit down, Kate, I put my feet on the ground and I visualize my feet as tree trunks with roots going into the ground. And because, I'm a spaz and I've always got something going on. So
Yeah,
I need to ground myself all the time. I use essential oils. There's a lot of practices, breath work, and I'm an adult. And you know what? I make my kids do these things too. And they've gotten in the habit of it. And I think it's really, really helpful because the evolution, for our 2E kids, they're always going to be more sensitive.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And in the world, those stressors are there and they continue. And, as parents, we want to shield and we also want them to persist on their own too. So it's finding that balance. And I think to your point, what a huge thing. These kiddos can really get the best of you, especially if you're those moments when you're not on your toes or you're not a step ahead.
Or you're tired.
You're tired. Oh, yes. And you're doing other stuff and you've got other kids to manage and working, all sorts of stuff on our plates. And it's that whole, checking in with yourself and like, how are you responding to your child in those moments? Because not only are you there modeling, but it's also like, figuring out if I'm dysregulated, then that 2E, those antennas are up and the kids pick up on it. And then it just becomes a cycle of.
And that's exactly it, sister. When you think about, now we're huge, we live a holistic lifestyle, Kay and I.
Yeah.
Like, Kate's like, I got this. What should I take? And then we do. That's like a life story. Everyone always asks me, what should I take for this? I love doing that. Right. And I'm always like, you're sick. Here you go. Hold on. Let me give you this.
Yeah.
And, but when you think about natural solutions, right, I think, I'm talking more about everyone always feels like they get to natural solutions. There's two ways you get here. You get here because that's your lifestyle and you want something different. And you get here because the other stuff isn't working.
Yeah.
And for the people where the other stuff isn't working, they're so scared. They're like, tell me this is going to work. And I'm like, natural solutions are evidence-based. And these things do work when you use them, when you do it. But we also can't forget behavioral strategies, parenting strategies, and our own inner work.
For sure.
But what would you want parents to know about natural solutions? Like, what's one thing you wish every parent knew?
I wish they knew that they didn't have to worry. Like, that's huge, right? Like, they don't need to. And the harm piece, like, you don't want to harm your child, and you hear horror stories about stuff. It's like, no, like, this is all stuff that's research based. It's and I think some of it too is like trusting that if you came to, particularly us, because I know how we are, like, we have that supportive environment and we've been through it, and come to us and you don't have to have the guard up either. Like we say, it's going to be okay, because we know that it is, and it may not be right away. And I think that's an allure to going to a psychiatrist or going somewhere for meds or, getting that quick fix. We have a fix. I think parents, are so stressed that they, rightly so, you want something quick. You don't want to suffer. You don't want your child to be suffering. But our strategies and the treatments that we've used, they work. And it's about kind of just hanging in there with that right support. And then you start seeing the difference and you're like, okay, this is good. We look for that first sign. I think with my son, with the neurofeedback, I remember his motor tics went away. Like, that was huge. Talk about a dysregulated nervous system. He was twitchy, and the twitchies went away. And that told me right away, okay, it's like mainlining right into that nervous system just by doing neurofeedback therapy. That was incredible. So now
it was absolutely. And when I think about, you are one of many of our staff who I plucked because you were one of our parents. So people say things like, well, they did neurofeedback because I work here. No. They did neurofeedback. Now they work here.
Yes.
And, being in our program and using PMF, we're all huge fans of PMF. Yes. You use it. I use it. I really am a junkie. Like, my battery ran out last night. I paid the price because I need to sleep. But I gotta go. I'm like, I gotta go charge that up. But and I love that because it is a wraparound. And obviously you're here supporting and loving up, people when they're here. And for somebody who, even as a perspective, like pull yourself out of as this unbelievable clinician. And I mean, I think about so many times where we had such a depressed person, right? You know who I'm going to talk about. We'll just call her Megan, where she came in her blanket.
Yes.
In her PJs, and she wasn't showering anymore. And that was what she could do.
Sure. Like not responding.
Responding. And what happened to her was just a complete turnaround, went to college, like just an amazing life. And she came out of a psychiatric facility. I mean, it was tough times and had always been a dysregulated kid her whole life. Her parents never knew her as not a dysregulated kid, and eventually it led to major depression. And the magic of SE, just you found one little piece and you got in there and you turned it around for her. Like it's just amazing, and that she just stuck in my head because there's only been a few people that show up in their PJs and a blanket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're not 5, you know what I mean?
No, I know.
They're adults, but and to be on the other side of it is, and then have the privilege of joining us, like our staff, like is always an honor to be able to do that. But I want people, I love that you said to get rid of the worry, right? So there's a validation, these things are hard, but worry creates inaction. Worry creates analysis paralysis. And I'd rather do what's not working than I'll take a leap and do something else. And that's what our program is about, is taking what works, what we know to work, but it's doing it in the right order at the right time in the right way. And it's calming the brain and relearning behaviors. And Kate's part of our team to really help that. And that's an awesome, thing to be able to be part of it. And for those of you who just learn about somatic experiencing, it really is an incredible, incredible way to give people actionable tips and tools and resources. And I actually wrote a professional book that I've never talked about on this podcast called Teletherapy Toolkit that is totally SE influenced and has all types of SE techniques in it. And we're actually going to be pulling that out and having more work books for parents and journals for kids to use some of those techniques. And but if you're interested in working with Kate or being in our program, you can go to www.drroseann.com/help. That was the webinar in case you want to join that /help. And you can take our solution matcher, and wherever you are in your journey, this solution matcher is going to match you. And if you want to jump ahead and you just are like, hey, I got to work with these guys, apply, because we only take a limited amount of people. You got to be ready for the journey. And sometimes, people are ready and sometimes people aren't. And it's a powerful change, and we support people along the way. But you gave people so many cool ideas about reconnecting to their body. And there's so many more techniques that I definitely want to continue this conversation and do
awesome. I would love it.
Techniques.
Yeah.
We also do EFT tapping too here. Kate loves to do it. And people were very interested in that. So I would love to have you.
Oh, yeah.
I know, right?
We've had some great results with the tapping, and, littles up to, there's no age limit. You can learn it. It's, understanding how it works. And then there's so many places in your life you can apply it. And it's all about resetting the nervous system, resetting the brain, and it's hitting those emotional layers that have been stuck. It's a really nice modality, and I love using that with people too.
I love using it with people too. When people like it, it works, So, and we're having these conversations to empower parents, give them hope. We are moms of kids with stuff, and our kids are thriving. But you can't let your foot off the gas, and we don't medicate our kids. So, and I'm not trying to shame or blame anybody. If you're here or you're in our Facebook group, Natural Parenting Solutions, You're here because you're looking for another way, and we have to follow science, and it always leads back to natural solutions. Anyway, I love and appreciate you so much, Kate. You're an amazing human being.
Likewise.
And I can't believe our kids are like getting old and they're teenagers.
Yes. I'm a little bit of denial about it.
Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, I hope this brought some light and hope for you and wherever you are in your journey. It's all about the right solution at the right time. And don't get stuck in inaction. Take that first step and take our solution matcher by going to drroseann.com/help.